I should add a little something in there.
Sure. Whatever you like.
During part of this, during part of the so-called change in what we were doing at K-25, I was involved with metals, with metal finishing, because I could take the equipment that I had and do it. And we did a lot of contract work for NASA. And Bob Jordan was then plant manager. And Bob and I traveled quite a bit. We went out to San Diego to sell our wares.
My neck of the woods.
Huh?
My neck of the woods.
Yeah, out to San Diego, at Durham. I'll find it in a minute. And went to Albuquerque and went to a lot of the sites. Got quite a bit of work there. We were doing polishing, we were doing nickel plating, doing things like that.
That's what you needed to do with the construction. All of that stuff needed to be done? Or what was that for?
What was what for?
The polishing and the nickel plating and all of that.
We were doing it hopefully to build up a market.
Ah, okay.
We were trying to build up a market. NASA had a problem with getting the missiles not to destruct until it got back to Earth. And so we were doing things like we were plating plastics to give the plastics longer life in a hostile environment, like in their first, when they were fired off and when they came back to Earth, because they were going through some tremendous heat. And, you know, you wanted to have some control over them, right. And that was bothering NASA. And we had it interesting enough. We knew some of the things to do, and so we did it for them. But that wasn't a big business. That wasn't. What we were doing is trying to keep the door open.
And what types of jobs, or how were you associated with K-25? Give your job title and approximately how many years you did that.
K-25. I can't even remember some of them.
Okay.
I started out in the beginning at 1410. I started out as a technical consultant for the organization. There was a lot of uranium processing. There was a lot of purification. We were trying to get stuff going so that we could make a cleaner UF6, not have all the junk in it.
Right.
We weren't doing a very good job when you got down to it of giving the fluorination people good fluorides. We just weren't doing a very good job. And we started working on that. And there was a lot of work to be done there. But that, and the other part we did, the other part of the thing was like this. We weren't doing a very good job of cleaning things so that we would not get U-235 other places. And we did a bad job in part of that. We almost did as bad a job as United Nuclear did up at near Wood River Junction. They left fully enriched uranium on parts, stainless steel parts, and God, we were short on U-235 during the period. before we fired the Hiroshima bomb, we were hurting. We were hurting for enough U-235 to make a bomb. Matter of fact, it was close. Best I could see it, it was close. And I didn't have the inside track at all. But we were trying our best to save all the U-235 we could and get it into a warhead and fire that sucker. That's what we were trying to do. That was our mission.
Right.
But the trouble is we started a little too late. And we could have done a better job there by you know. Now, when I got to Kerr McGee, the first thing I did is I went in there and cleaned up every bit of that damn stuff and got it back into the fuel cycle. And we had a lot in it. But I didn't want that stuff in my plant. It just increased the hazard.
Right.
Plus, it made you have more money in inventory that you couldn't use. So I had to do something with that.
Would you consider that your most challenging assignment?
Ooh. What was my most challenging assignment? For the most part, we didn't operate from assignments. We saw something that needed to be done, you went out and did it. And that's the way it happened. So it's now if you'd write something, if you were doing something and you did it, you wrote it, then they'd publish. And that's what we did. That's one reason I spent so much time on nuclear safety, because we didn't have a nuclear safety accident. We didn't need it. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money preventing it. Now, we could have taken another route, but we wouldn't want to take it. And that's have an accidental criticality, because we had everything it took to do it. But I can't tell you what my most challenging job was. I don't really know.
What do you feel was your most significant accomplishment as an individual or as a group?
You know, I don't really know the answer to that. I really don't know the answer to that. I did a lot. I got patents, things like that, but that's just something. And it seemed like to me they paid for it time and time again. And all I can say is the K-25 people set the right tone for creation of self-starting people. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Absolutely. What sort of, what sort of roles did women have working at K-25? And how are they treated?
Well, I can tell you how my secretaries were treated.
That'll work.
Huh?
That'll work.
Well, we were the secretaries and I had really separate jobs. And how they did their job was the way how I could do my job better. And we worked together to do that. And we were all friends, very close. And they seemed to like that. I didn't look over their shoulder and see what they were doing. I knew they knew. I knew when I hired them they could do the job. I didn't bug them. And they were very well. They were very good. They were very good. And they kept me out of trouble.
And did you have any contact with Afro-Americans or any minorities? And how were they treated?
Did I have any what?
Any contact with minorities? People of minority groups?
Yeah, I had contacts with them.
And how were they treated?
I don't know. I had people working for me that were black in Kerr-McGee in Oklahoma. You talking about a tough place for a black to work, that's in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a tough place.
Yeah, I used to live in Oklahoma.
Did you? Where?
In Edmond?
I lived in Oklahoma City. Not just a little bit down the road.
It is indeed.
But you know the attitude.
I do indeed. What was life like for your spouse and for your children?
Where?
In Oak Ridge.
It was fine. We lived a pretty normal life, but there was a lot of things around sports. I always liked to play sports, and Emily and I watch sports right now more than anything.
And that's your son?
My wife.
Oh, Emma. I thought you said Emily.
Yeah. She and I watch more baseball and softball than anybody.
Oh.
And my first wife was not that interested in sports. But Emily has. She likes it. So I guess she's really more enthusiastic about sports than I am. She knows everybody's name.
What do you think future generations should remember about K-25?
I don't know. I know if people would read the right things, they would get a good positive elections. I think anybody that reads Leslie Grove's book have to have a good impression. You just have to have it.
Well, I know you talked before about the camaraderie with the people that you worked with. Is that possibly something that you would want people to remember?
Yeah.
The bonds that were formed?
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that's really important to you. The friendships that you've gotten out of it. And
I tell you, I really believe what I'm about to say. I think I met some of the nicest people I ever knew in my life here. And when Emily when we married, we both had a house. And I said, Emily, what are we going to do? And I had 4 houses. Wasn't living with one. Anyway, she said, I'd like to stay right where I am. I said, Emily, that's your right, is to have a home and live where you want to live. So I'll go with you. And so, not too long after that, we were on our way back from Columbia, South Carolina, watching a tennis match. And I said, Emily, why don't you just write a few sentences that describes what you want this house to look like when we get finished. And she did that. And that turned out to be the guidance for us for our house. We wanted it so that it was comfortable. We wanted it so it'd be low maintenance. We wanted it so that it was attractive from the inside and the outside. And so we built it. We hired ourselves a contractor and went to work. And we have been thoroughly and completely delighted with it. Now, isn't that neat?
That's wonderful.
And I'll be honest with you, I've been the luckiest guy in the world. I married 2 women. I love both of them. And there's no doubt about that. Okay? And Emily and I get along like 2 peas in a pod. And she and her family and me get along great.
That's wonderful.
Isn't that great?
That's beautiful.
But when we started out, we said, okay, this is where we're starting from. Now let's create a good family.
Absolutely.
So we created a good family.
Is there anything else that you want to say about K25, or is there anything you want to expand on?
Well, only thing I can say is one of the best experiences of my life. I enjoyed the people there. I enjoyed, I enjoyed some more than others.
Of course.
Sure you do. There's personalities in everything.
Absolutely.
And, but in general, I think we all did a good job. I think we all did our best. Now, maybe we didn't do a good job in some. I didn't paint the floors every day like I should have. I didn't do all those things. But we were just being ourselves, and I enjoyed K25. I really enjoyed it, and I had some awfully good friends there. And didn't get fired for sleeping on the job. Thank God for Flick. He came to me back to me when he said, you didn't get fired. I said, well, you didn't get fired either, did you? He said, no. But he was a hair lip guy. And he was a crackerjack. But Flick was something else. Joe and I worked together great. We worked together great. And Bob and I worked together good. Matter of fact, we got along real good with almost everybody. Well, can I do anything more?
That's it. That sounds good. Wonderful.